All right, welcome into a Monday edition of the Inside the Tigers podcast. I'm Harrison Valentine. Glad you're with us. Today we're joined by radio host and SEC Network Analyst Cole Cubelic. Cole, thanks for coming on today, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So we're an LSU podcast, so I'm going to have to ask some questions about the Tigers, but I also want your thoughts on some teams around the SEC as well. First thing I want to get to is ESPN recently announced that LSU Texas is a 6:30 p.m. kick on ABC in that primetime slot. That's unquestionably the most important game on LSU's schedule this season. Make it out of Austin with a W, and it's smooth sailing for quite a while there. How high are you on LSU in 2019 with all they have coming back and actually, for once, a manageable schedule to deal with?
Yeah, because last year I think that was the big sticking point. That the reason that a lot of people wouldn't allow themselves to feel good about LSU was that schedule just looks inhumane, especially with what we thought Miami was going to be. They didn't really turn out to be, I guess, the real contender to Clemson in the ACC that we thought they were. But still, you get them week one, nobody knows that, and you go into that game obviously with a little bit more pressure than maybe if it was week 8 or 9. I like the way the schedule lays out. You think about the fact too, you get Auburn at home. Auburn hadn't won there since I was playing football in an Auburn uniform, which was 1999, a long time ago.
Yep.
Obviously, you have to travel to Alabama, which is not an easy task, and that's one that everybody's going to circle. But that game's a little bit different every year than most other games on the schedule. So I think it's a pretty favorable schedule, even if you're talking about having some heavy-hitting games the way that they do. And I think there's a lot to like about the team. I'm going to open it up a little bit more. I really like Joe Burrow. I mean, I think he's a gamer. I think he's tough. I think he's one of those quarterbacks that his teammates sort of rally around. I have some questions about the offensive line. I think center and right guard are going to be in great shape. I think the tackle position, especially right tackle, is one that could be of concern. And I think when you lose a tight end like they lose, that could potentially help you in pass pro, maybe help you in the run game a little bit at those spots, then that makes that a little bit bigger loss. And Foster Moreau is just a hell of a football player. But the skill positions, I think, are pretty good, especially wide receiver. And, running back is not going to be a strength of the team. But if they're going to change their philosophy a little bit, I don't know if it has to be. And for the people who think that this spring game not going under center was what LSU is just going to live and die by, I'm not really buying that. I still think you'll see LSU play a physical brand of football. I mean, if you think LSU is going to get inside the 10, down 3 points with 4.5 minutes left and not run the ball a couple of times, then you're foolish. So
Exactly.
I think defensively, my real concern, I mean, listen, you lose some stars. Greedy Williams was a star. Devin White was a star, was a leader, ultra productive. You're not going to have another Devin White there, but I think the secondary is going to be strong enough to be able to offset some other deficiencies on the defense. I think Caleb on Chase on back is going to be a guy who can rip on the outside and give you a pass rush on the edge that maybe they didn't have a year ago. I thought Divinity had a really good year last year. Not many people talking about him. Love Rashard Lawrence, one of the better interior defensive linemen in the SEC. I think your issue on defense is just going to be a couple new faces at linebacker and defensive line depth, specifically on the interior of the defensive line. In the SEC, you got to have extra bodies. So I think having Dave Aranda back is the key there. They know the system. They know the terminology. They know the expectations. I don't think the defense really takes a step back at all. And a lot of that's going to be on the strength of maybe the best player in college football on the back end, Grant Delpit. So I like LSU this year. I feel pretty good about them. I think you sort of take what we thought was going to happen with LSU last year and you put that on the plate of Texas A&M this year, giving them a schedule that people just the football team's probably going to be better than what the record was. And we thought LSU was going to be that last year. And LSU may even be better than their record was last year. But I think LSU right now, if we're ranking teams in the West, I'd have them second behind Alabama.
Yep. As you were saying, Auburn, Florida, Texas A&M were all battles last year for LSU, and now they all have to come to Baton Rouge this year. So the schedule sets up nicely where a lot of those tough ones from last year are at home this year. And you talk about depth. I mean, they just had a key cornerback enter the transfer portal, and I think that says a lot about this guy, Derek Stingley, coming in, and they're fighting for the job. So, I mean, that cornerback position is going to get probably a freshman as a starter. Now, moving off of LSU, I want to get your thoughts on Mississippi State, a team that lost three first-round draft picks, their starting quarterback. There's no way a team can lose that much production and improve, right? What's the ceiling for Hail State this year?
Well, it's going to be tough to improve, but I don't think that their defensive coordinator gets near enough credit. And I think they had better defensive line depth than a lot of people talked about last year. So they have some guys who played. Now they don't have an edge guy like a Montez Sweat coming back, but I think they're going to still have a pretty good defensive line. And I think they may have the best all-around linebacking core in the SEC. I mean, Errol Thompson was legit last year, didn't get near enough publicity. Leo Lewis is a sideline-to-sideline guy. So I think you're looking at a defense that can be close to what they were a year ago. Now, they were the number one defense in college football last year. Are they going to be that again? No, probably not. But if the offense can take a step forward and be a little bit better than they were a season ago, and that's going to be tough because you got Nick Fitzgerald gone. You lose Elton Jenkins at the center. So those are two difficult guys to replace. But if you have a quarterback, whether it's Keaton Thompson or Tommy Stevens, that understands the scheme a little bit better, and you can move the ball a little bit more, maybe better efficiency on offense can also help that defense. So I don't really know what to expect from Mississippi State last year because you really just wasted a generational defense. I mean, you had the best defense in college football, and you kind of wasted it on a season that you weren't really in contention to win your division. So are things going to be better? Kind of tough for me to really be confident in saying, yes, I think things are going to be much better in Starkville.
Now on to your alma mater, the Auburn Tigers. They're kind of a tricky team to judge right now. They lose Jarrett Stidham, but return Derek Brown. They enter the season without an established quarterback, though. Is Bo Nix going to be that guy? And if so, is Auburn a team that could surprise in 2019? There's been a lot of hype and talk around, like you said, A&M and LSU as that number 2 team behind Alabama. Should Auburn be in that conversation, or is it too early to tell?
Well, it kind of seems like it always works that way. And I do think that Auburn could surprise, but mainly because the expectations are so low.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are talking about Auburn as a 7-win football team. So the schedule's not easy. I mean, you're talking about playing, I think, 3 top 10 football teams, depending on what polls you look at in the preseason. And, well, maybe 4, because you got Oregon on that schedule as well, and some people are going to have Oregon in the top 10. So you got Alabama, Georgia on the schedule. So the schedule is going to be a daunting task for Auburn. The offensive line should take a step. Now, you got 5 starters back, but those guys didn't play great football last year, at least not consistently. So second year under J.B. Grimes coming back as the offensive line coach, you would anticipate that they'll be a little bit better, but they're going to be starting a redshirt freshman or true freshman quarterback. And obviously problems come with that. Headaches come with that. So I'm a little concerned about – I'm not concerned about wide receiver. I think Seth Williams is going to be great. I think they have depth at that position. They're going to be fine there. I'm a little bit worried about them losing Chandler Cox, who's played H-back there for the last few years. He did a really nice job. He was the most physical player on that offense last year, and it shouldn't be that way, but he was. So who sort of fills that void? I don't know if they have the same kind of a guy that's as versatile. And quarterback's the biggest question mark. I think they can get away with Boobie Whitlow at tailback and offset some of that with Sean Shivers, maybe moving into the backfield to do a few things. Then obviously you have Cam Martin, who's not a big physical tailback, but can hurt you outside of the backfield and do different things. So I think they're good enough at receiver and running back. The offensive line is going to have to make big strides. And then you're going to have to find a quarterback who can't just make plays, but knows how to manage games at certain times. And decision-making is going to be key. And when you don't have someone who you've seen do it in games, it's hard to really judge what you're going to get.
1 or 2 more before we let you go. We're on with Cole Cubelic. Cole, A&M's schedule is just brutal again this year, having to face Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, probably the 3 best teams in the country. Regardless of win or loss total this year, what's the trajectory of this program heading under Jimbo in your eyes? I mean, they're recruiting like a program that's here to stay.
No, it's up. It's way up. He's put together a great staff. He's recruiting A&M on a national scale, which is what should be happening. That brand is big enough for that. Not just playing in the SEC now, but the facilities that they have. That thing should be recruited on a national level. So I think the trajectory is up. Even if they go 7-5, the trajectory is still up for me, in my opinion, just the way that Jimbo's managed that thing. I think they'll still even though, I mean, it's a toss-up between them and South Carolina, who has the most difficult schedule, maybe in college football, not just the SEC. But I think regardless, I think they'll still do better than people think. So I think right now, everybody looks at them as 7-8 wins because of the schedule. But some of those teams that we think are going to be good are going to take a bit of a step back. And there's going to be teams like Miami last year. Then there'll be teams like LSU last year that exceed expectations. But I still think A&M's a team that sort of exceeds some people's expectations. The receivers are too good. The quarterback's too good. They lose a lot up front on defense, but they get Michael Clemens back at defensive end. And I think they have a couple of guys like Bobby Brown that hadn't played a ton of football that are going to surprise some folks. If they get decent play on the back end, I think Mike Elko's defense can be about as good as it was a season ago if they stay healthy. So I still think A&M, because of the staff and because of what kind of a coach I believe Jimbo is, can still surprise some people even with that schedule.
And then finally, as we sit here in May, just about 3 months from kickoff in the SEC, is there a storyline, whether it's in the SEC or college football in general, that you're most excited to follow as we look ahead into this 2019 season?
I mean, I think Auburn's a big one to pay attention to because it's going to be a young quarterback. Gus Malzahn taking over play calling. I think that's a big one. I think one thing I'm interested in following is Clemson and their schedule. And if there's not a team or two in the ACC that's on their schedule that sort of take a step nationally, are we going to be talking about what that schedule realistically is? What if South Carolina doesn't have a good year? What if A&M doesn't have a good year? And those are two of the better teams on their schedule. So if they drop a game, is the committee going to hold that against them? Because I think we all look at Clemson right now as a team that sort of deserves for that to be forgiven and deserves for that to be overlooked. But if they were to drop it, because I don't even know who the second best team in the ACC is right now. And I think that's okay in some conferences when you're debating between 2, 3, 4 teams. But I think you can't even come up with one in the ACC a lot of times when you have that discussion. So I think the Clemson schedule is one that I'm following, and then the Auburn-Oregon game, because I think Oregon's the sleeper team to make the college football playoff. With Justin Herbert back at quarterback, a top 5 offensive line in college football returning, you got enough back on defense to be formidable. I think Oregon's a team that, if we're talking about outliers to get into the playoff, if they can get a win week 1 against Auburn, I think all of a sudden they enter that discussion.
All right, that's Cole Cubelic. You can catch him hosting 3-Man Front weekdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in Birmingham or on the sidelines for the SEC Network. Cole, thanks for the time today.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
This has been the Inside the Tigers podcast, keeping our eyes on the Tigers 24/7.